Let's welcome music journalist Karen Shook to host the Q&A.
Looking forward to being joined by Claus and by Anne. Anne?
Thank you very much.
Claus Withopf, Anne Clark.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. What goes through your mind, Anne, when someone says they'd like to make a documentary film about you?
I think they're a bit crazy, but they must be a bit insane, I think.
But he's got form. Now, Claus has made a live film about you in 2009, is that right?
Yeah, he filmed a live concert in, what was it, Dortmund?
Mainz
yep.
in Germany.
Yep.
Well, what goes through your mind, Claus, when you offer to make a documentary film about someone's work and life as opposed to a live concert, which is a much simpler prospect, I guess?
Actually, this concert, this music film was part of the process working on the documentary, because I worked more than 10 years actually on this film. And starting already to work on the documentary, the idea came up to shoot a full concert, which is then also possible to use for the documentary. So I was already started with the documentary. So it was kind of a side project.
But Anne, did you hesitate to say yes to a film project like this?
Well, to be honest, originally, I thought it was just one of those encounters. You have so many encounters in the music business, with people. I want to do this, I want to do that. And most of the time, nothing comes of it, So to be honest, at first, I thought, yeah, why not? Let's see what happens. And then he followed me like a shadow for the next 10 years. So
that's a very long project. Does it get irritating having a camera running around after you for 10 years?
No, I mean, it wasn't fully 10 years. Let's be clear about that. But no, I think overall it worked pretty well. I mean, of course, there's some moments where you just think, no, I don't want you here now. But I think generally it worked pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the process, the work was more than 10 years, but of course we were not filming all the time. The long time really was also to get the budget together. So it was not only for filming, it was really finding the budget to produce the film. So the time expanded so long, and then we got the budget and could film then really the final.
It seems to me that as a musician and a performer, far more than, say, just as a poet, there are so many relationships of trust that are involved with musicians, with labels, as we've heard of. With a filmmaker, there seems to be a really big situation of trust, allowing that someone will represent your art and you in a way you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, but I think very quickly I got to know Claus quite well. I mean, we have a very good communication. That's obviously very important. If we couldn't really communicate our feelings or intentions, then it wouldn't have worked. So, yeah, I felt a sense of trust with him, really, quite early on.
Were there any things that you thought about working with an artist like Anne that demanded a different approach as a documentary filmmaker? Which is not to say that you can't make a really abstract film about a metal band or, a very confessional film about a kind of artist where you would expect there was no confession involved. But was there anything about Anne's music where you thought, I've really got to find a new or different way, whether it's putting lyrics on the screen or more abstract moments?
Yeah, I think I was really very inspired by Anne's lyrics, and I was really listening her music, and the lyrics followed me very long from my teenage years. And so from the beginning, I thought when I created also kind of a script before, because I had from the beginning the idea to do a full-length documentary, actually. So I had already the idea that I want to really present the lyrics and the meaning, and that I want to find a special visual approach also. So this was from the beginning my idea, to have also this text animation and some experimental footage to make really the work of Anne visual, more visual, yeah.
Were there any things about talking about your life or your past that you didn't want to talk about, or after speaking about thought, I don't really want that in the film?
No, not really. I mean, Klaus has a very charming way of getting answers that he's looking for, I must say. That's for sure. He's very smart at that. No, not really. I mean, like I said in the film, I try. I try to be as honest and as open as I can. You know, we live in a world where communication is so complex, and I don't know, what should I hide? What do I need to hide or not talk about, really? I mean, the only difficult bit, I suppose, really is a bit where we covered my family, my parents, because they're not here anymore. You know, they can't say anything to what I had to say. But no, there was nothing really.
When you go through a process of a film that is biographical as well as focusing on your art, I suppose part of the process of being an artist of any kind is that you're constantly thinking about how you move on. But when you look at your younger self on the screen, listen to those words that you wrote when you were 22, 23, do you see a big difference between that person now and you in terms of aesthetic, in terms of focus as a writer?
Well, I hope, of course, that it's matured in some way. I mean, I really came out of the punk movement, you know, this very brash, raw kind of period. And I hope that as I've got older, that things have matured in some way. But more importantly, I hope there's something fundamental and recognizable for the audience, because one very important thing is that my career's existed through the public, not through any industry. I've been at war with the industry from the beginning. And if I can't be direct with the audience, then I don't have any chance, you know, as an artist.
So that your career was through the public. Presumably, how did the film get funded? Klaus, how did you manage to put this together? There was no large label paying for it. How did that happen?
Yeah, it was really difficult, so that's why it took so long. Also, in the beginning, I really spent my own money and started after Anne agreed, because this was for me very important to have really Anne on my side and not doing a film from the distance. So after Anne agreed, the good thing was that she was working on a new studio album and she agreed that we can film there. So I immediately started, and then I began to apply for film funds. And I got a first film fund, and I also got a distribution company in Germany for the theaters. And then, then it got on and on to find a production company and some other state fundings. And the whole process then really took almost 8 years until we had the full budget. And then we had the money also to come here to Great Britain to film here the London and Anne's home.
Now, the record that you're speaking about in the film, is that the collaboration with Thomas Ruckholt that is about to be released?
No, that's a brand new one.
Right.
That's
maybe you could tell us something about that
about
record?
the new one?
Yes.
I'd love to. Please go and buy it. There's a CD out. It's the first studio album, really, that I've done in 10 years now. And it's called Homage, The Silence Inside. And it's really a collection of my favorite writers and their poems and their material that I've taken and recorded with Thomas, who's a musician in Germany. It's like everything seems to be here. It's homemade, self-made, self-financed. So it's a small project, but as I said earlier, you know, my involvement with the industry is never a good one. So I'd rather do it from home and be in control of it than give it away or have it taken away, I should say.
So this is self-released. It will be out next week.
Next week,
that right?
Yep.
Who are some of the writers that you're offering a homage to?
It covers quite a spectrum. I mean, more contemporary ones is Alice Oswald, who's one of my really favourite writers. I don't know if people are familiar with her. And then it goes back in time to Yeats. Who else? Sheena Pugh. I don't know. There's quite a collection on there, really. You'll have to have a look at it and check it out.
Klaus, when you're filming a writer as opposed to a performer, how do you approach that as a filmmaker? I thought it was lovely that we saw the close-up of Anne's hands. It looked natural. I think we've all seen interviews with authors where people are posed awkwardly next to their book or doing the, I'm thinking a big thought and going to write it down. How did you manage to get something that looked as natural as it did? And how did you feel actually writing while the camera was rolling?
As always, Klaus just invaded my home. So he was squatting there, really, and we just, yeah. I mean, we'd known each other so well by then, that I think it was very comfortable for you
I
to be in.
think that was the
home.
thing. It was a bit part of the 10 years process. So I think if we would have shot this in the first 1 or 2 years, it would have been not so
been very different.
intimate. And so we had this long time already spent together. And I think then it happened like this. And but I think also that we came here to England to shoot at Anne's private home. I think that was also part that I hope you felt comfortable also, and not because I really didn't want to set it up also. I didn't want to go in a bar or in a punk place or so. I thought it's nice to be private and comfortable in a way.
Is it a bit like bird watching? You sit there quietly long enough.
This I would not say, but
Bless a spotted Anne clock.
You mentioned in the film that you feel foreign in London, that you feel strange being amongst English people.
Absolutely.
And am I right that you do spend time in England?
Yes, I love England. I love the country where I live. But I do also feel an alien when it comes to the people here. I don't feel any recognition from the people or to the people. And I think that's often a position of a writer or an artist, that you really are on the periphery looking in often.
Maybe being a little bit alien gives you a better perspective than
I
if
don't
you
know.
were completely
I don't
comfortable.
know.
Have you forgiven Croydon? Come on now.
Forgiven?
Yes.
Forgiven? Wow. I mean, it's where I'm from there. It's not a question of not forgiving it. I just don't feel connected with England, which is sad. I find it quite sad, but I've accepted it now. You know, it's never going to change. I'm an observer of the country, of what's going on. But I view myself very much as a European,
Klaus, what do you
which
think?
isn't a very popular position to be in right now here.
Klaus, do you see Anne as being English? Obviously,
this
she's
is,
extremely popular in
yes.
Germany and much loved there, but
It's really a good question, because indeed, when I saw Anne the first time in the television, in the kind of German Top of the Pops Formel 1, I think I was around 12 or 13, and for me was really a remarkable moment, because for me, of course, Anne Clark was really the English musician, and all these bands, Depeche Mode, The Cure, I was really obsessed with British music. But Anne really also, I was just starting to learn English, of course, in the school. I was so interested in her lyrics, so I thought I really have to find out what the lyrics say, because I had already the impression there must be more, and I was really connected to the texts. This was also part why I followed her so much as an artist, and came up probably with the film. But really for me, and I think also for Germany, Anne Clark is really the British, the English thing. So as a teenager, I had really the longing and the desire to come to London, and this was really great, I think.
so you even found Croydon interesting.
He loved it. He loved it.
Despite Anne telling you there's nothing to see there.
I mean, the shooting was great there, I have to say. The day was great, and especially at Cane Hill, I think that was
At the
nice.
hospital where I used to work, that was really special. Yeah.
Does any of your feeling about England come from, you were on a panel at the Global Media Forum last year talking about activism and artivism, and of course going back to the law is an anagram of wealth, and I think, why didn't anyone else spot that first? Or even the smallest acts of kindness, which is another angle on politics. You've always had a political angle to what you do as an artist. Does your political activism have anything to do with why you feel disconnected from England, the political situation here?
Well, at the
Brexit,
moment, definitely, very much. But just to clarify things a bit, I was born in London, but my mum was Irish and my dad was Scottish, and so I'm a bit of a mongrel anyway. There's this, mixture of stuff. It's not that, I just don't understand the English mentality. Sorry, but I don't get it. I don't get it. This, on the one hand, very open and welcoming, and on the other, this very closed and dismissive and judgmental element that seems to run very strongly through the mentality, of the people. And I guess you could say that about every nation, every country, every people, but it's my personal experience.
And at the same time, it gave rise to refuseniks like you, who created something that was open, that was non-judgmental, that was inspiring to.
Well, it's a
people.
reaction, huh? It's a reaction to that, I think.
I wonder if writing. I found it really interesting that you said when your father died, you couldn't write, and when your mum died, you couldn't stop writing.
Yeah.
Do you talk to other writers about their craft? I mean, and especially specifically poets.
I don't talk to anyone much. No.
Well, you have to tell Claus to get out of the way when he's behind the fridge with the camera, presumably.
No. No. No.
What about talking to your musicians? I was looking at the footage in the film where you're in conversation. You're essentially, I suppose, would it be fair to say you're a conductor of your musicians?
I mean, people write all kinds of things everywhere, but I've never really. I have to admit that I am not a great musician. I've tried to learn every instrument from when I was a kid, and I don't have the discipline, the self-discipline to really, really master an instrument. So I view my position a little bit like a painter or like a cook, that you take these ingredients and mix them together, and maybe you shouldn't mix those together, but I want to try it and see what happens. And I've been very fortunate over the years to have worked with, such incredible and open musicians, right from the very rawest punk musician to the conservatoire musician. I've been so fortunate, and I think if there's anything I can do, it's that. It's bringing these kind of opposite elements together and trying to get them to mix together and create something new and different for people.
What about capturing those moments on film where, I mean, obviously any process of recording an album or working with musicians involves discussion, involves sometimes as the person leading things saying, no, that won't work. We see little bits of that. We know that exists, but that changes the tenor of the film somewhat. Were there actually quite big fights that you didn't put in, or?
Don't say, Claus.
No, I cannot say, but this was a bit like the bird watching moment, because the rehearsals, because they were, as you see, very concentrated. So, and they were really the great musicians who were so much into it that there was most of all not so much conversation because everybody was so concentrated in its own work. And so we have, I think, very good moments in the film which represent how the flow is there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very important. You always have this idea of the leader of a band or the name of the band being this tyrant, but I think it's so important to allow the musicians to contribute and suggest things. I might tell them to piss off with their ideas, but eventually. But I think it's very important that if they have an idea, that it's really listened to.
Do you think you have a different perspective because you're not, say, the guitarist or the
Absolutely.
bass player, or so that you're looking at it from a different perspective?
Yeah.
Obviously, any record where the band is fronted by a bass player, there's an awful lot of bass in it, or sort of the natural tendency, maybe stepping back and knowing that you're not using an instrument whatsoever. You're perhaps more.
Like you say, a bit like a conductor in a way, bringing in the different elements, really.
How do you feel about your music having mutated or developed over the years, going from a couple of prehistoric synthesizers to now cellos, a vast palette?
Well, to be honest, on the very first album I did, the mini album, The Sitting Room, there was a mixture of old prehistoric dinosaur keyboards on there and strings and piano, and so I've always
not such a change.
Mixed. No, it was just really working with David Harrow in the 80s when he wrote the music for Sleeper in Metropolis. Now it became these big hits. People picked up on that very electronic element, but I've always on most of the recordings there's acoustic or what you call classical instruments on there too.
I'd like to offer the chance to the audience to ask some questions, but before we do that, one thing I was thinking about was Rilke. And of course, even those of us who don't know much about German literature know Letters
He's
to a
on
Young
the new
Poet.
album too. Yeah.
Great collaborator. How is he to work
He's a
with?
great guy. He's very quiet at
yeah.
the moment. But
Letters to a Young Poet. If you had to offer advice to your younger self or a poet now, a writer now, what Rilke said, look inside yourself, don't think of anyone else.
Yeah.
Does that still hold?
absolutely. I mean, you have to be honest to yourself. You know, you'll be attacked for it or praised for it. But I think, especially in these times, you know, I think you have to be centered in yourself, really.
Thanks. Right. We can pass out the microphone if anyone would like to ask a question of Anne or Klaus. In fact, I believe there are some there.
Is it on? Yeah. All right. First of all, Klaus, gut gemacht.
Gute
Really
Nacht.
gut gemacht.
Okay.
Where?
Here, little one. Very well done. Really beautifully done and very sensitively done. I can't wait to see this movie again. To Anne, I want to say thank you for bringing poetry so close to me, because I have never had any access to poetry. It just never went in. Happens with your voice, beautiful music underneath, it goes right in.
Thank
so
you.
thank you for that. And I want to say something as well, which is really weird. How you talk about the English, I talk about the Germans.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
It's so weird being, I think it's also being in that new environment and being a bit different, kind of as part of an identity thing. And then suddenly everybody around you seems nice and lovely and you're a spiritual animal. So I think that's why I don't have it with the Germans. I'm just one of too many. But talking about Germany, and you've already bordered on it, or you talked about it a bit, I've always wondered why you are so massive in Germany. And here in England, it's quiet. You're part of this whole synth pop, Depeche Mode, Alice Moye, Yazoo, all that for us as Germans. And I've always wondered, is it because we like Kraftwerk and all those kind of synthy things more? And we're cold and it has more? Or is it just simply distribution? Or why did you never make it in England?
I wish I could answer that. How can I answer? I just know that from when I was very, very young, I had this real curiosity about Germany, for example. And I just loved the music, the literature, the history, the language. I just really had a curiosity there all the time. And I can't answer that. I mean, all I know is that in between kind of 1979, 83, something, I was doing small gigs here and things. And I was very fortunate that John Peel, who I expect some of you will remember, this wonderful DJ who unfortunately died a few years ago, he just took up so many bands and things totally off the wall, crazy things, and used to play them on his wonderful radio program, and that would be broadcast out in Germany to the British forces out there and all, you know, the military out there, and of course kids and things in Germany, German cities pick that up. But I can't answer you. I mean, that's my dilemma. They don't understand me, I don't understand them, you know, but somehow it's landed in, and not just Germany, but I mean, you know, many countries around the world, except my own, and I can't answer it.
I got a theory.
Uh-oh.
Sorry.
Uh-oh.
All right, I'm going to stand up. I'm Australian, but live here. I feel the same about Australia.
Here we go.
I got a theory from my perspective, and also thank you. I'm just blown away. I discovered your music through the Mark Reeder documentary, Lust and Sound in Berlin. Mm-hmm. And I heard your voice and was like, oh my God, what is this? And being here is my whole brain is just blown apart, because I've been a poet since I was a little girl and thought I had to sing to get my message out. And I wish I had have discovered you when I was younger to know that I didn't have to sing. I could just speak it really well and get brilliant musicians to back that up. So seriously inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So my theory is that I found as an Australian here, and I'm quite direct and like to speak my mind and be clear. No, really?
An Australian being direct? No.
So from my kind of perspective as not being English and that whole keep calm, carry on, Britain doesn't like to talk about it.
About what?
Whatever it is.
Anything.
Directly, clearly, importantly, in serious, in-your-face lyrics as you
No,
do.
that's very true. That's
And
very
I think
true.
that's why you wouldn't
Yeah.
have picked up here. Whereas I think Germany, being with the history and the pain and the horrors that they've been through, they're like, yes, you've broken through the walls and told us how it is. And they embrace that. Whereas that's my idea anyway.
Absolutely, I think
Thank
you could be
you.
right, because I mean the last
Yeah.
review I got here was of being called a pontificating prat. You know, that was
And see what rubbish.
so-
It's because they're too afraid. Good on you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Let's see if
Thank
we
you.
can find an English person to say something.
I don't think there's any English people here.
Anyone else?
Hello. Hello, and
Hello, Sebastian.
hello. Oh God, that's embarrassing. Hate speeches. Well, no. Once again, thank you for a wonderful documentary. This is the second time I've seen it. I went to the previews in Dresden in January, and second time I've had tears rolling down my face, certain moments. So thank you both for making a wonderful film. However, I want to ask about the new album. Musically, what can we expect?
You have to go and buy it, and then you
Is
can
it
hear
actually
it.
outside
It's
that door?
out there, waiting
Well,
for you.
just
Waiting
wait,
for you.
Just wait. No, but musically, what can we expect from the new album?
How can I describe it? How can I tell you? It's with a musician that I met, like we all meet everybody nowadays, via the internet. He originally did a remix of a track of mine a long time ago, somebody from Jena in Eastern Germany.
Oh, okay.
He's never recorded albums really before, he's never performed live.
Oh, wow.
But I heard his music and it is so, for me personally, so sensitive. His musicality is so beautiful that just kind of evolved the contact with him. How can I, for me it's very filmic. It creates great atmospheres, his music. But you have to go and buy the CD and then you'll find out.
Definitely. Well, that's probably like, when you, we can probably say that you discovered Herbie. When I remember when you posted just before you did that thing with him, when you posted some of his music on your Facebook page, I immediately I fell in love, and thank you very much.
You're welcome. The internet is a wonderful,
It
wonderful thing,
is,
whatever
yeah.
people tell you.
Thank you very much.
We'll end with a few more thank yous. Once again, Klaus, beautiful film, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.